Okay. Hello, everyone, and hello, Kawtar. I am so excited to meet you today. Let me introduce you to those who are listening. I have with me Kawtar Latrech, an OT doctorate student at Cedar Crest College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I've met Kautar in early on the stages when we were doing the logo competition. She is a very frequent supporter of the Arab American Occupational Therapy group, and we really appreciate her presence. She's her own star on Instagram. She has her own account. It's called the OT Cat. Very catchy name. I love it.
Thank
On Instagram, where she shares like a lot of the OT student experiences and like other things. I enjoy your posts tremendously, so please keep doing that. So Kautar comes, or like she has heritage from Morocco, and beautiful country of Morocco. I've been to Morocco a couple of times and I love it. I'm going again in January, so I'm really excited about that. Uh, Kawtar will tell us a lot of the head experience today as someone from the Arab heritage. So I will let her try first to tell us a little bit about who she is as a person. And I know a lot of fun facts about her, but I want her to talk about that. So hi, Kawtar, and thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Hamed.
Yeah.
Um, Shaking off the nerves. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Like you said, like I think it's great that we have a community, especially in the OT world. We'll get more into that too. I am a second year OT, newly second year OTD student. So yay, we just finished
Hey.
our first year. So I've definitely gotten a little bit of what it feels like and what it is to be an OT student. I'm very grateful to experience all the experiences that I've had, ups and downs. These are teaching moments and teaching experiences. Yes, I am from Morocco, born and raised, and we moved to the city of brotherly love. Shout out to my parents. Hi, mom. Hi, dad. Um, so I grew up in Philly. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a community where my dad had Arab identity all around. It was a struggle at first. I went to a school that was predominantly white. It took for me to get to high school to see more people of color.
Mm.
And through there, I flourished into my own identity. I was fortunate enough to have a household where we were rich in culture and rich in language and rich in heritage as well as religion.
Mhm.
I do identify as Muslim, so I have a lot of influences through that, through Islam. Um,
Mm.
but through Arab identity, I was able to find myself in my niche. I know we grew up in I'm an only child, so
Oh, you
uh,
are.
I am an only child, yes. Fortunate enough to have parents that do not spoil me, but respect that I am an only child.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm really fortunate to have amazing parents. They've nourished me into the woman I am now, and I'm just so grateful that I can grow up in a community where I had so many resources and I was able to speak for my own self and connect through my own heritage and produce a career that I can share with others as well as my clients in the future.
That's amazing. This is such a great opening for all of this, and I really appreciate that. So I didn't know that you're an only child. That's another fun fact I'll add. This is great. So I loved something that you mentioned in your bio, that you showcase the diverse world of OT through your lenses as a non-traditional student.
Mhm.
And I love that part, and I want you to expand a little bit more about it because it speaks to the heart of what we're talking about, and you said you were able to show that identity throughout your interactions growing up. So tell me more about this. What do you mean by a non-traditional student, and how does that affected your learning and who you are today?
Absolutely. So when I first came here, I had to be pulled back a year
Mm.
for school. So the only reason was I didn't speak the language. And it took me a while to get used to the English language. Growing up in Morocco, we had to learn Arabic. We
Mm.
have a dialect, so it's called Darija. And in Morocco as well, which we'll expand later, there's so many different dialects with so many regions that you explore there. So one of the things that was very hard for me was I had to learn English, but also hold on to my own language and my own tradition and cultures. So balancing those took me a little bit of a while, but I was able to fluently speak English eventually. But the non-traditional aspect for me was that I didn't go to a four-year institution immediately. I went straight out of high school to a community college. And I personally think that that is the best thing you can do for one that wasn't sure about what they wanted to do in a career. I grew up with so many options that I was open to. My parents were very lenient with decisions that they make. They always wanted to make sure that I chose a path that was for me and highlighted my interests. I just didn't know at the time. So I wanted to make sure that I went to a community college where fortunately I took my time to learn the different things. And through personal experiences that happened in the family, I had to take a couple years off. So I transferred over to Temple University and I finished my bachelor's there, and I identify as a non-traditional student. I didn't go straight to a four-year college. I took some time off. I went after my bachelor's straight into a doctorate program. And the reason for that was I didn't want to, I wanted to explore my options all in OT. I admire every single master's student. I think a master's is really great. And it was one of the options I actually wanted to explore. But something about research really pulled me in. And at the end of the day, like I know for every OT student, there's a reason that you pick a master's versus a doctorate.
Yeah.
I chose that for the purpose of I wanted to explore more. I wanted to give a deeper depth into the OT world. So that was my reasoning for a doctorate.
Yeah.
And just the non-traditional aspect. Like I grew up in a very non-traditional American way of doing academia. And I grew up with more Eastern values. I grew up with the concept of your family does come first, and having that in the background of OT is, I believe, is going to help a lot when it comes to Western views of how we see OT. And I think that's really great because when we talk about Arab identity in the world of occupational therapy, a lot of us are seen as very um, contextual with what we do and very unorthodox in a sense. Like OT in the Western world, I would say, is focused on being independent. When you grew up in an Eastern world view, we grew up in the concept of we help our families. We grew up to help our elders.
Yeah.
We don't leave our elders to be independent. And I think that that's something we resonate a lot with our elderly generation, our geriatric generation. And I think that's where it comes to, I know I talked about my bio, but therapeutic is a self. You can connect through those experiences and connect with like how important it is to be independent, but also have that role of being a caregiver as well.
Yes, yes. And you touched on a lot of points that are exactly the sentiment of so many Arabs and individuals with Eastern values when it comes to collectivism and the co-independence and the interdependence when it comes to living, and especially for the elderly population. And I want to add to what you're saying. In some communities of Arab descent, the idea of, for example, having your grandparents or your parents placed in a nursing home or a skilled living facility, it's not even on the table.
Yeah, it's unorthodox.
It's not even an option. It's actually frowned upon. It's looked at as a form of being unloyal to your parents and your upbringing and your values. So I couldn't agree with you more on how things are way off sometimes when the way we learn in school and how we actually live. And I'm so glad, you as a doctoral student saying that, and with your passion to research also, hopefully you will be able to highlight these differences. These are like, major, um, deviation from how we are living things. So hopefully that will come up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's great that what I really like about now, currently in 2023, is that we are forming a new generation. And I think people are realizing that, especially in the OT world, that there are new faces, new ways of looking at things. And it goes back to, like I said, non-traditional views. Um, we are taught in OT programs and in the OT world as well that yes, there is no one set of direction in how to treat a client.
Mm,
Everyone's different. Everyone has their own way of you doing treatment to a specific client. But that's when the context of your client comes in, and that's when you don't think like, I guess, like, I think we as OT students and OT practitioners, we don't think that this is just normal, and I look at it as non-traditional.
yeah.
The world of healthcare is non-traditional. Everyone has to be equally looked at differently in order to provide the best care.
I agree with you. And this is again, where we circling, like when we talk about cultural humility, that's exactly the point.
Absolutely.
Making sure that you have, the tailored interventions for the client, representing the context and the culture. So spot on, Kawtar.
Thank you.
Um, something interesting you mentioned about yourself is your work with the firefighters. So tell me a little bit more about that. What led you on that path, and talk a little bit more about that experience.
Absolutely. So one of the classes at my program at Cedar Crest is qualitative and quantitative.
Mm,
So we had the opportunity at my program to pick versus qualitative or quantitative studies.
mm,
And I chose qualitative. I'm really hesitant with math, but I like the experiences. What was really nice about my professor, Dr. Reitzman and Dr. Koch, they are two professors that help teach the class. One teaches the class and one audited the class. And they explained to me more about what qualitative studies are and the experiences of one's individual experiences in a sense.
mm,
So me and two of my colleagues in my program, we decided to look at the experiences of firefighters and how it affects their occupational performance.
mm,
Now, from my experience with firefighters, I remember one time I got into a nasty car accident and they were very nice. They were there and they were like, hey, it's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be okay. And it hit me in that moment when I was thinking about what I wanted to research as a topic. And I
mm.
was like, no one really talks about firefighters. We always know that they're just really great guys and girls that help and fight fires and help us with things that are emergencies. So as a collective, as a group, we decided to ask their occupational performance. What is something that hinders that performance for you?
Yeah,
Um, and through our studies, we found that a lot of firefighters experience a lot of sleep apnea, a lot of mental health issues. People disregard what it's like to be a firefighter in a sense. So we looked at career firefighters specifically versus volunteer firefighters. And a lot of them said that noise plays a really big difference when you're trying to get that sleep. Sometimes the alarm that sounds when you have to go to an emergency, it's numb to them. Not in a way where they obviously have to go to their emergencies.
yeah,
But when they're trying to get that sleep, it's anything is a bother, anything's awake. And going home, like sounds and alarms is just, if it's a trigger for them.
yeah,
Um, so we realized mental health is a really big issue in the firefighter world, and that hinders their performance through their lives. And majority of these firefighters that we've spoken to have passed in the military, and they highlighted a lot of their PTSD and how they found their way through that in the firefighter community, and they found like a collective of great supporting individuals through their own communities and their own families. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we got to learn.
yeah,
It highlighted a lot about what we now later learned, which is their occupational profile in a sense.
yeah.
Um, and I think that was just something that strengthened my ability to be an OT student, as well as in the future as an OT practitioner, was just listening to their stories and
Mm,
listening on different ways of how it affects their performance. And
Nice.
at the end, what we really saw was that they were so happy that they were able to like talk to about themselves, and be like, hey, like no one has ever asked us about this. This is
Yeah.
so different. And we wanted to highlight that yes, like they do have a lot of mental health concerns, a lot of sleep apnea concerns,
Mm.
but they do have different ways of coping. There's a lot of
Yeah.
coping mechanisms. Unfortunately, we're students and we can't actually
Right.
give them any type
Yeah.
of feedback.
Mm.
But I think that the research in itself was just a beautiful gateway into what research really is and
Yeah.
why it's out there. Like someone could benefit from understanding what it means to be a firefighter through their performances in this research.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that will be in the form of a capstone one day.
Who knows?
Knows, yeah. So maybe something to consider. It's a great area, as you said, and it's yeah, I don't see a lot of research on like, that occupation. So anyway, just take notes. Maybe this will be, a great project for your capstone, hopefully.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back to the Arab identity, and I would like to think of two ways. Can you highlight some of the good things
Mhm.
about your Arab identity and how your life is right now? All things considered, what are some of the good things and some of the not so good things about you being an Arab in the US?
Ooh, okay. So I think I'm gonna touch on the great things first. The
Yeah,
good things I would say is me being my inner self right now, the food. Um,
yeah.
I love the food. I think that everyone should have at least four more spices in their household. Um, that's just my theory on it. Um,
Agreed.
yes, but I think the reason why I touched on the food specifically, yes, it's really good, but it brings in a very important subject of gathering. Um,
Mm,
food through Arab culture is a way for us to gather and talk as a family, and talk as a
yeah,
cohort. It's through celebrations, it's through weddings, through funerals, through um, achievements. I think that we are known for our hospitality, which is another
yeah,
good thing. Especially in Moroccan culture, like we
yeah.
have like an open door policy for our visitors and our guests. Like your home is our home, my
Yeah.
home is your home. Anything that I have is yours. And I think it's really beautiful because we sometimes fail to recognize that it's okay to have help. It's okay
Mm,
to have someone that like looks over your shoulder. Um, and it's okay to feel like you belong somewhere. The world can be a cruel place. The world can be a lonely place.
yeah,
Um, and it's nice to know that you have a community where someone knows who you are, someone knows who daughter you represent, what family you come from. Someone can speak on your values and your traditions. And for me personally, I think being a Moroccan American, I'm able to get best of both worlds
mhm,
and able to share my identity the way I grew up with other people. One of the things that I really liked when I bounced around a lot from different specialties as an undergrad student, um, I worked in different hospitals, and a lot of them ask me like, "Oh, what does it mean to be Moroccan? Like, what do you guys do? Where is Morocco?" Um,
yeah,
and yeah, a lot of people would ask that, and I would say it's in North Africa. Yes, I identify as an African person.
mm,
Um, and a lot of them would ask me like, "Wow, like I didn't even know this was a thing." Like, it's amazing how much like culture and richness you have, and I'm grateful for today's technology because now I can actually show people videos and like show them
yeah,
what it really likes to be there without
yeah,
actually being there in a sense.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that what's really nice about just identifying as Arab culture is the community that it brings, the food that we have, the
yeah,
gathering we have, the connections that we have, and just being able to represent our own and be proud of who we are.
yeah,
And it's a beautiful feeling. It's a beautiful concept that is shared around the world. And personally, I'm going to shout out the Moroccan national team. We did great in the World Cup,
yes,
and
you did.
it
You did. It
shows.
was a great game.
It shows like we were able to connect, like, and it, like I said, it goes back to gathering and it goes back to families. Like all of them brought their moms down. All
Mm,
of them were able to show the world the importance of our own culture and importance of gathering and importance of religion, God. Um,
yeah,
so that's the beauty of it.
yeah.
Necessarily, I would say like the offsides.
Mhm.
Sometimes nosiness can be an issue. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes nosiness.
Called curiosity, not nosiness. So
Touche, curiosity. We'll go with that. But I not in a sense of I think the more I get older, I'm in my late 20s, and I think that one of the things I know is that yes, it is curiosity, but also it's just a sense of protection
mm,
too. And it's also like sometimes we have this concept of you always have to fight back, and it's okay not to fight back. It's okay to
yeah,
just be like, you know, you have a point. We're gonna roll with what you said and call it a day. Um, and I also think that one of the things I think I just experienced in general is just I'm trying to think of something that's not.
yeah,
It has its perks, but it has its values too. I think that culturally opening up to other opinions outside of our own world
mm,
is a little difficult. Nowadays, I think that for me growing up, I was very gated to what was in my own culture. Fortunately, I had a father who was open to understanding everything and very curious man. And I got his curiosity um, through him. I was able I like finding out a lot of stuff. I like Googling a lot of things and I like knowing how things work. And I got that through him. Um, and I think that in the Arab world, we have this issue that we're just so gated sometimes.
mm,
And it's important to understand that if you're living in a community where it's different from you, sometimes you do have to understand the community in order to form an opinion.
yeah,
Um, and through that, you're able to connect through other individuals. Now, I'm not saying you're supposed to accept people. That is your own decisions. At the end of the day, whoever you accept is between you and that person or that community or that group. But I do think that we as individuals need to understand and need to listen before we form opinions about other um, groups, other minorities, other religions, other different types of cultures in a sense.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think those are the only two I can think of is just nosiness and sometimes being gated to our own opinions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, you know what? And I appreciate what you're saying. I think, and that's the beauty of these, conversations I have with different people. Everyone has different things to share, either like on the good side or the upper side or the downside. So in your experiences, like these two stand out to be like, the downside of this identity. And I agree on, something you said that reminded me of my father used to be like obsessed with the history of the Arabs. So he knew the ins and outs of Arab history from the day they existed. So and to clarify something, like Arabs like were fighters. We were like, because of the nature of our life, thousands of years ago, they had to move from one place to another, and that with that comes the idea of fighting for their survival, fighting for their existence. And maybe that's where it came from. It's like, they inserted themselves in places where they have to prove themselves, they had to fight for their survival, and they also had to keep their values, to preserve their values. And I think this is where it's coming from.
Yes.
It's that the the cross-generational fear of losing identity and of surviving. And I think maybe that's what modern life looks like. But this is one of the things I remember my dad used to say. It's like, no, we were fighters because like we would had to survive, from one area to the other, given like, the difficult life circumstances that we had in Arabia. It was not a very forgiving, living circumstances in terms of like, temperature and the biodiversity there. So maybe
Yeah.
that's one.
No, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting how you brought it up in modern day life, like, how these are like, and I agree with you. A lot of our cultures could be too noisy sometimes, and could be too, and you were very nice about like how you describe it. We can come across as stubborn sometimes, or like, not so open-minded. But again, as you said, it like, being open-minded is a human way of being, not only to the Arab way. So that's a good advice.
Yeah, and I think that I think one of the best advice I ever received out of my advice list is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, what said something that resonated with me a lot, and I hope I'm not wrong, is that before you formulate an opinion of something that's happening to someone or someone in general, have a specific doubt. Like, for example, if you are coming from a background, let's say hypothetically an Arab background, and your son or daughter comes home late, for example, instead of yelling because you're home late, give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe stuck in traffic, maybe had to go to the bathroom, maybe something came up, and that's the reason they're home late. And then that formulates all the negative thoughts out of you.
Right,
Um,
right.
it's such a great way of looking at it, because we are so conditioned to like think the worst. But and that's everybody. I've learned that we're so conditioned to think the worst that sometimes we have to push, like, step back and be like, okay,
Mhm.
a lot of factors could have happened, but let me think positively. And
Yeah,
you'd be surprised how a calm presence switches a whole environment.
yeah. Right, right. Absolutely. I agree with all that. Great advice. Great advice list. Okay, so looking back to our questions, you mentioned so many things of our questions, so I'm very grateful to that. So since we still talk about like, the different, perceptions of Arabs as well, like I want you to debunk one of the myths you think the world has about the Arab culture or Arab identity.
Oh, wow. The myths. Um, we are not angry people. I think that today's society assumes that for some reason, through music industry, through theater industry, that we are just savages. We are not savages. We are not angry people. One of the beautiful things about our Arab identity and our Arab culture was a lot of things that we invented
Yeah.
came from that. We were able to invent some of our medicines. We were able to invent some of our maths. We were able to explore the world. And I think that people would just look at our own cultures and our own traditions are as unorthodox, and that's okay. Everyone has different forms of views, but I think one of the myths that I always like chuckle at is that people think we're just genuinely angry people because our faces are mean, or our the way we look at a person. And sometimes, you can have like a face that's like a just a zoned out face. I actually learned that. I have a friend who her face is literally just, when you look at her and you're like, are you okay? And she's like, no, I'm just thinking about ice cream that I wanted to buy. And I'm like, okay, that's great. So I think that, and again, going back to the savages aspect, is just like, my blood boils sometimes, because every time I see an Arab identity in movies, um,
Yeah.
or in like different social media presences, it's like, oh, it's she's weird, or they're weird, or they're showcasing a lot of
Mhm.
different things that are not normalized. What is normal?
Yeah.
What is normal? There's nothing in this world that's considered normal.
Mhm.
People who say things are normal by their own views.
Right.
And that's one thing that I think we collectively, as individuals, as people in this world, have to understand that there's no such thing as a normal thing. And just because someone does something differently than you and someone views things differently than you, they're not considered savages in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And like, to your point, like it really hurts when you see these stereotypes being glorified and used as if like truths. And I agree with you. The Arab community, we may be opinionated, we may be strong-headed, we may be very clear about what we say, but we're not an angry nation, and we're not an angry
Really not.
ethnicities. It's not. And again, like I grew up learning how to understand current behavior from previous, like the history. And again, one of the things that my dad used to say is like, it's that anger, it's not anger, it's passion, because we communicated our passions through grand gestures, because this is how things used to be. Like, you say something, you have to say it clearly and passionately, because this is how people express themselves in the past.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean it's anger. It doesn't mean it's being confrontational. It's just passion coming this way. But again, it speaks to the Western and like the mainstream, as you said, and the word, your words, normal. Mainstream doesn't mean it's mainstream for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know that Arabs come in all different forms of culture, religion, and aspects, but personally for me, being a Muslim woman is another thing. I know it's a touchy subject, but I do want to highlight that there are so many different ways that, thank God that I grew up as a Muslim woman. That I had so many opportunities and I have so many things that identify me through the lens of my own religion. And I think a lot of people just assume like Muslim women are oppressed. We are not oppressed. And if you speak to them, I know if you speak to a lot of different Muslim women, they will tell you like, I don't know what today's society thinks that putting on a hijab or putting on a modest clothing is an issue for. It's one, it's none of your business. Two, everyone has a point where they're able to express themselves through different aspects. And
Yeah.
like I said, thank God I have a religion that allows me to go to school, a religion that allows me to identify who I am, a religion that allows me to express my own type of feelings, my own like I'm a female. It's okay to be a female.
Right.
And a religion that respects my authority. I'm able to have my own job. I'm able to have my own income. I'm able to have my own degree, and it's okay for me to do that. Like I have these rights. So that's something personally for me that a lot of people are touching about. They're like, wait, you can do that? Yes, we can. We're able to have our own income, and our husbands
Yeah.
don't have to ask us about it because they're not allowed to, and it's
Right.
okay.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The whole stereotype of women being oppressed, especially in modern time. Like, if you look at some of the societies within Arab culture, like you'd laugh at the idea. If anything, women are pampered, women are respected. They do run the world in some communities. But also I'd be, remiss if I don't emphasize, but also we can't generalize. Some
Yes.
Arab women, some Muslim women are highly oppressed. And and again, some of it is political, and some, areas in the world, women are oppressed and they are stripped away from the right of education, the right of, living, the right of, marriage. So it's different for everyone. And I think we have to highlight that this is how it is. But I agree with you. The majority of Muslim and Arab women are not oppressed. They have their right to choose whatever they want, but that also, comes with individual differences and sub communities. So yeah.
Right. And you highlighted something really important too, the difference between culture and religion. That's
Right.
another big one in Arab culture.
Yeah. Totally.
A lot of the things that may be looked at as cultural will be debunked as religious. No, you have to marry in your own race. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Religiously, it's a whole different thing. So that's really something that is a touchy subject, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a touchy subject because those things are two separate things.
I agree.
Culture is one thing, religion is another. And I think that's something that we struggle in our own communities
Right.
to look at.
I agree with you. I'm like, to add to the mix, politics play a big role.
They do.
We know that in some communities and some countries, religion is used as a political tool. to govern, and could be used as a political strategy to, run how, societies perform. So also keep in mind that religion is one thing, culture is another thing, and also politics may play a big role. So good point. Okay, so you touched on so many things of the things I wanted to ask you beautifully. So I'm so grateful for that. So I want to end with one question. What is your message to the allies, to the friends of, the Arab American Occupational Therapy Group, or to allies and advocates and friends of the Arab community and Arab ethnicity in the US? What would be your message or advice to them? How can they help? How can they support? Or like any other message you want to send to them?
I say first things first, as an OT student, I was fortunate enough to really touch on therapeutic use of self. And this is for my practitioners. You meet someone who is a client or a coworker, use that therapeutic use of self, learn about who they are, do that extra research. That takes you from their therapist, their coworker, to an ally, someone they can rely on. From a patient perspective, OTs are really big on patient advocacy. That's right there is advocating for your patient. You're learning about them because you're learning on different ways that you can help them become better at their occupations that they do every day. And I think that's such a key fundamental skill that we tend to look over as clinicians. And that's one thing I will definitely say for that. As far as just coworkers or colleagues or peers, get to know one another. Like I said, give the benefit of the doubt, have an open mind, go visit, go out to different types of different places and boroughs or sections of your city that may seem a little different from what you really go to. Learn the language if you can, if you have some free time. Arabic is a little hard, I'm not gonna lie, but
a few words can go a long way.
A few words can go a long way, and body language and eye contact, we also use that as language. So
absolutely.
That's one thing. Take the time to get to know one another. I think that majority of the world's problems could be easily, and in a perfect world, could be easily fixed if we sat down in a meal, going back to food, over food, and talked about our problems through the lens of understanding, through the lens of being open-minded, and understanding that kindness and love and affection and our history, our backgrounds, and our traditions play a really big role in how we will be using our own experiences and our own identities through our own practices. Excuse me. And I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm really happy and excited to start finishing my journey as an OTC student, but also starting my own path into being a clinician. I hope that it touches different types of communities and different types of other religions and cultures and backgrounds that I can highlight on my own. I know one of the things I really want to look more into is we touched about nursing homes. While yes, in Eastern values, yes, that is considered frowned upon, but let's say, for example, you have a nursing home that has just Arabs in it or identifies as Arabs, and you put different types of specific attributes that these patients or clients have. Like if you are Muslim, you can have the Jummah prayer. If you are Christian, you can have Sunday Mass. Having different things that identifies that, because what's one thing we fail to recognize as individuals is that yes, while our Eastern values or Eastern cultures teach us to be kind and to help elderly people and to never let go of that, it's okay to also understand yourself before taking care of someone else. And maybe if we had a nursing home that has different attributes and identities where you can be placed to, or even just an adult daycare, for example, that could possibly help one of the things that I seen in geriatric populations is the loneliness of it, meeting
Mm,
other different. And as Arabs, we love to talk. We can talk for
right.
days. We can talk about population. We can talk about gardening. We can talk about
Yeah,
food.
we're
We'll talk.
chatty.
We are very chatty. And that can be something that helps that person. Like imagine you
Yeah,
take your grandmom to an adult daycare. And it's like, hey, how was your day? Oh my God, I need to tell you about what Muhammad said.
yeah,
And he told me that I have to redo my plants because my mint is not working or
yeah,
not growing, excuse me. So it's great. And I think that that plays a fundamental role in how we just view different things. And it goes back to being non-traditional, being
yeah,
the preserving your culture, preserving your traditions and backgrounds, but also keeping an open mind in the modern world.
yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And I think that's great advice and message. And I love that you brought up mint. We're very serious about mint.
Oh, yes. The
Mint
mint
is
garden in my
everything.
household is not to be touched.
Yeah,
It
every
is a
Arab has
sacred
mint
sauce.
somewhere. That's a great example. That's a great message, Kawtar. Thank you so much. This has been like, a very mind stimulating conversation. I really truly enjoyed it. And I can't wait to see what will come out of your experiences as an Arab, doctorally prepared OT. And I look forward to seeing your posts on your Instagram channel. And, I look forward to seeing more of you also in our events and activities with the Arab American group. And again, keep doing what you're doing, spreading the word about this identity. I think you have great experiences. And I look forward to talking to you more about your experiences down the line.
Thank you for having me. It was
Yeah.
really nice to debunk everything. So I
Yeah.
appreciate this a lot.
Well, the list is long, so we're not done.
Yes, we could have kept it going, but
Yeah.
it was a pleasure being here. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me.
Same here. Thank you.